This is the Exit Diaries. Today's diary entry is with Rachelle Peterson, my old boss, a woman who spent 30 years inside corporate media, building strategy, building teams, building a name that opened doors until the title stopped meaning what it used to. And the ladder that she'd climbed for decades started to feel finished. This is a diary entry about what staying started to cost her when being exceptional was no longer enough. Rachelle, there is something really poetic about this. You and I worked together, obviously, at Warner Brothers. You were my boss. You hired me. Honestly, you were the best boss I've ever had. And that goes down without hand saying. And I know my interview wasn't great. You gave me a shot. And then several years later, you left. And there wasn't any dramatic leaving. It was not angrily. You left quietly, deliberately, respectfully. And now, kind of a weird full circle, I'm interviewing you for a podcast about exits in the same ecosystem that you once lived in. So your story is different because you've shown different exits and different types of exits throughout your career and your life. For example, when you were 18, which we were discussing about before we hit record on the camera, you left your homeland of Netherlands, a one-way ticket in your hand to New York in the 1980s, which is just crazy. We'll dive into it in a minute. But first, I want to start here. When you left Warner Brothers, you were then walking into something new. You went to Sky, and then you went to CNN, and then from CNN you went to DAZN, and you've had that career life there. And after 7 years, say in CNN, which was like a really amazing career that you built there, and you finally kind of walked away, and then ultimately in your final chapter, which was working for DAZN, and you weren't walking into another corporate role at that stage. Did you feel like you were leaving something behind, or were you walking towards something that you'd already been forming?
So I left the zone after only being there a year. It just wasn't a role for me. And it just didn't gel. And that was kind of like, I really was working towards going back into corporate. It's really all I've ever known. I've built a corporate media career for 30 years. I've worked with some major brands, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to give that up. On the other hand, very much so, I think I'm a little bit unemployable. I've got opinions and they don't always gel in the corporate environment. So whilst I tried really hard after the zone to find another corporate job, not for very long, it's about 2 to 3 months, I knew I was going to go. By sort of February, I left in May, and then by the end of June, I decided I didn't really want to pursue my career any further. I kind of reached what I thought my potential was going to be. I left a C-suite role and I just wanted to do something different and work for myself and see how that was going to go. So that's kind of a decision that I made. But it took a little while for me to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, when when did you feel like when you were employed that perhaps you were potentially unemployable? When did that hit?
I think when I got fired for the third time. So I've been in the UK for 27 years and I've had about 8 or 9 jobs in that period of time, sort of leaving every couple of years. But of 3 of those jobs, I was actually let go, including the last one. And I think what it is that when have been employed for such a long time and you've been through lots and lots of different managers and different types of positions, but always in the same field, you really get to know your business. You really get to know everything that you need to do in order to make that successful. And that doesn't always gel with the corporate strategy. And
Mm,
I think when I was at the zone, when that didn't gel, the corporate strategy was different from what I believed we needed to do in order to make it successful in that particular area. It was kind of a mutual decision. I mean, I was let go, but I knew I wasn't going to stick around for very, very long. And whilst I tried really hard to find another corporate job, the realization hit that maybe now that I'm in my mid 50s, I need to start doing something that I enjoy doing, that I know that I can do for myself, rather than working for someone else. And I was in
100%.
a really lucky position that I was able to do that.
Mm. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it was almost sometimes when we get to certain points of our lives, we realize that there is something else more to what I'm currently doing, or
Yeah,
there's something bigger here, or there's a bigger picture here. And of course, we all have those doubts and other things going on in our minds and sabotage and everything else. But what you said there was really interesting because every time you got to the point where you were trying to grow within the role and
mhm,
improve that area that you were running as the business and the companies that you worked in,
yeah,
a lot of the time it probably felt like your experience and your expertise was almost too big or too good for the
yeah.
roles that you were in. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. And it's also having then a manager. The last role was really, really important in that. I was there for a year. I had three different managers. And whilst I started there, the manager that I had knew exactly what I wanted to do. He had done something similar years past at BT, was great guy, trusted me 100%. But after 3 months, through another cycle of redundancies across the board and just shaking things up a little. They did that quite a lot. Then you're getting into a new boss after 3 months and sort in an entirely different way. And it didn't gel. And then a third boss, then again, even with even less experience. And it was just one of those moments where you went, you know what? This is not for me.
Mm.
This is not the way I want to finish my career. And when they came and wanted to do yet another round of layoffs, I was like, how much are you going to give me to go? And whilst I really, really wanted, or really, really thought I wanted another corporate job, and I went through lots of different interviews, every time I came to sort of the last two or three, I was kind of throwing the interview because I really realized that I probably didn't belong there. I probably didn't belong there anymore. And I really wanted to do something on my own. Not quite 100% realizing, but I guess my subconscious knew that maybe that wasn't for me anymore.
Okay, so that I love that because you just said your subconscious knew. And I think this is a really important
Yeah.
point where sometimes subconsciously we have already exited, we've already
Yeah.
left or made that decision.
It's a
And sometimes,
quiet quitting, isn't it?
right, exactly. And there are two different ways of the exit. There's the external exit, like you've left a job, you've walked out of this building, you're no longer employed by that person. And then there's
Hmm.
the internal exit where we
Hmm.
have to internally accept that this is where our new path may be going.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you had that internally already there as a subconscious mind, which was kind of, in a way, sabotaging your interviews, which is
Yeah.
quite funny, but it's led to the right path, right? Because
Yeah.
you've gone from those corporate offices, Warner Brothers, Sky, CNN,
Hmm.
massive companies.
Yeah.
But then where you are now, you run obviously two businesses. One's a consultancy business, which I know is the
Hmm.
first one you started up, and then you've got your incredibly amazing rebound and rise. So from corporate, sorry, to your own business, two very different lives. But let's
Yeah.
quickly rewind for a moment then back to when you were still inside that kind of VP level, senior director. I mean, as you just said, you worked a whole career to get to that point.
Yeah.
What did a typical Tuesday look like for you in that world?
Typical Tuesday would be getting into the office for, well, by 9, but usually a lot earlier than that. Working on strategy, calling a lot of people, putting together business cases. But it was really strategy building because we were trying to set up the business from ground level. Either the business was brand new, like it was at the Zone,
Mm,
or at CNN, it was actually not doing very well. It was dipping. It wasn't performing the way it should be performing, and so it needed a new strategy in order to build that back up again. So a lot of strategy work, a lot of trying to figure out where this distribution business was going to go, how we were going to go and generate the revenue that we needed to make, and what were the applications that you needed to build. So we were going from a very linear sort of old-fashioned type distribution business to everything digital, everything app-based. So there was a lot of talking with technical people, and I'm not very technical at all, but I kind of knew what I wanted and what we needed to do in order to do that. So it was a lot of strategizing, a lot of meetings,
Mm,
a lot of meetings for the sake of meetings, which I don't like very much. And it was a typical sort of corporate strategic sales role and then trying to build a team to make it all happen. That is actually the part I did like. I always enjoyed working with team members and trying to motivate, and that was always my favorite part of any sort of corporate role. And that's the one part that I miss from not being in corporate anymore, is having colleagues and having those sort of moments where you're building something together. And it's one of the reasons why I love Rebound and Rise so much.
mm. Yeah, we'll come on to that. And it's a really good point because your average Tuesday is you're commuting, you come into work, you grab a
Yeah.
coffee, you're trying to check your emails, and you've been dragged into a meeting, then another meeting for the sake of the meeting, then you've got another call, then you've got some more
Mhm.
strategy stuff. But then on top of that, what you don't talk about often is then you might be interviewing for somebody, you might be doing a performance review for
Yep.
somebody, you might be pulled into another meeting that has nothing to do with you, but you've got to be pulled in there. And so you're getting pulled in all these different directions. And ultimately, I guess, I mean, I remember the days when you and I were working together, and the average Tuesday was like every day. You know, every day was like that.
Yeah.
And that Tuesday could be the very first job you ever get or the very last job you ever get. And it's
Yeah.
30 years of just that, right?
Exactly.
So, and so that's the
Not very
life.
exciting anymore, is it really,
No,
after a while?
well, I look back at that and I don't miss it as such. As I'm the same with you, I miss the being with other people and
Mhm.
with people who I enjoy working with. And as you said, like building that team and being part of a team that's growing
Yeah.
and something's happening. And there's like yourself as a leader who's bringing in these people who are superstars to add to that team development to actually change something within a company.
Yeah.
That's exciting, but the rest of it for me is not an exciting world that I didn't really enjoy. And you've lived that once, and I know that there's a story about how you got there to where you are now, and
Mhm.
we'll come back to that. But I want to stay quickly in the old world just for one moment longer. When you realized, or when did you realize that not that you wanted out, but there was no way up left for you to go?
Yeah, I think I positioned myself in sort of a little bit of a niche market, distribution in commercial entities, which is not something that a lot of people do, a lot of people know about. It is a very specialized market. And when I went from Warner Brothers to Sky to CNN and then to the Zone, those were always they were always the same markets. I built my 30-year career basically in that specific niche business. And when I left the Zone as a senior vice president, that was kind of like it. That was C-suite, couldn't get much higher than that. And I didn't enjoy it.
Hmm.
And I think the moment I realized that I didn't enjoy that anymore and that I wasn't going to be able to get any higher up than where I was, I kind of realized at the same time that they realized that they wanted to part, that that was no longer really what I wanted to do. And I couldn't go any further in that particular area. So why not start my own?
It's interesting, right? Because we all get on this ladder and we're all
Mhm.
climbing it, and there's always
Yeah.
someone above you, and then you get above that, and then you keep going up more, and there's like
Yeah.
this carrot being dangling above you, right?
And
But
I thought
you,
that that's what I wanted,
yeah,
right? I thought that that's what that was the career progression. That was
mm.
the that's what I really thought I wanted. And ultimately, it, that sort of stopped being the end all be all.
And I agree. And knowing and leaving are two very different things, right?
Mm,
So especially when you're like really good at what you do and
hmm
you've reached the highest level possible, especially
hmm
when you have the titles, the salary, the global
Yeah.
teams, and you're in your 50s in a male dominated C-suite world of you, as you
hmm
just said, and you know that if you leave, no one's hiring at that level
No,
anymore,
it
right?
gets very, very thin up there, right? It's very,
Mm.
very difficult once you get to a certain level, especially salary wise and job title wise. And you're in such a niche market that there is nowhere to go. except doing something that is uniquely yours. And that's really the only thing that I really wanted. I thought I was going to finish my career at the Zone. When I left CNN, which was a job I loved, I wanted to do that one more thing, that one more starting something brand new, being in a C-suite role, having that sort of defined career moment. And I thought I was going to finish it there. I thought I was going to be there 5, 6, 7 years. That's how long I was. I was at CNN for 7 years. I figured if I could be there 7 years, then, I retire happily because I got there. And that turned out not to be the case. And now I'm basically starting out fresh and starting over. And I'm 58 years old now, and I'm starting something that is uniquely mine. And it's exciting.
It is exciting and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel fresh. It doesn't feel new. It's just the a next chapter for you, right? And
hmm
what made, what would you think made staying feel more dangerous than leaving?
Well, first, I didn't have a choice at the Zone, but
Mm,
for CNN, I left because of a new position. And the reason why I left was very much I wanted something more. There was no career progression in that way at CNN. I felt I was doing the same job and I was doing it well. Our division was very high performing division. I had fantastic colleagues, but I was bored. There wasn't anything there that I could build and I could really form because I had done that. I'd been there 7 years and I built the strategy and then from building a strategy we built the business and we increased the business and we grew the business and there was nowhere for me to sort of go and I was still hungry for that little bit more. And that's the only reason why I left because
mm,
the job itself and the colleagues and everything was great. It was just it wasn't fulfilling and I didn't want to finish there where I could just coast. I didn't want to coast. And that was what my job at CNN had become. It was kind of like you've got the brand name, you've got the job title, you have the colleagues. I was speaking on panels, I was a thought leader. I loved it, but it wasn't enough.
mm,
And that's the reason why when the Zone headhunted me, I was like, I can start something brand new because they didn't have the division that they wanted me to lead. And so that was exciting. That was something new and something sort of to look forward to. And that's the reason why I left it. And that didn't work out.
mm,
But in the end, people have asked me a lot of the times, like, would you have left CNN, the role that you did really enjoy and colleagues that you enjoyed, if you'd known that you'd only be at the Zone for a year? I can honestly say yes,
mm.
because the amount that I learned at the Zone was just things to do, but also things not to do was phenomenal. And it was a really good experience for me. It was a totally different world. Like you said, it was very male dominated. It's sports, it's technology in sports, very, very few women. Learned an awful lot, a lot about what not to do, but it sort of prepared me for my own
Mm,
business a
mm.
lot more than any other role had been, even though I'd only been there a year.
Is it fair to say the role felt almost like it was yours, your own business in a way, because it was so new and fresh, and it felt
Yeah.
like you were having to build something that was ultimately yours, but not yours, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Did that spark a bit of a business sense within you?
Yeah. Especially when you're sort of pushed back, right? So when your bosses or they're saying, yeah, but I don't think you should do it that way because of X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, how would you know? Because you've never worked in this type of market before. And it was very much like you hired me to do a job. You hired me to put a strategy together for this particular part of the business that granted you don't know much about. Believe me when I say I've been doing this for 20 years. Believe me when I say this is the way it works. And then getting that pushback, you kind of start thinking, well, I can do this myself and I
Mm,
can do a better job of it. And so when I left the Zone, that's exactly what I did. So I started Lokia, which is a consultancy, doing exactly what I've been doing for 20 years, doing that commercial distribution part. And now I work with major brands, including CNBC and a whole bunch of other brands that I'm helping putting a strategy together for that business. So it's kind of come full circle. I'm still doing the things that I know and then I've been doing for a very, very long time, but now I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. As you said, it's like full circle, right?
Hmm.
And I guess when the title disappeared, right? Because if you think about the going back to that thought process and the internal feelings that we
Yeah.
sometimes get when you weren't Rochelle at CNN or that which is the last big name if you like, or you weren't the VP on the business card or the global terms,
Hmm.
big corner office, all those kind of things, decades of building all of that and
Yeah.
working your way up and brilliantly at it and like really working hard to get to where you were. Everyone knew you as Rochelle, the executive, okay?
Hmm.
And then in that specific world, in that media corporate world, when that identity was gone, who was left?
That's really a tough question because I found that really, really, really hard. Not gonna lie, that SVP title, something I worked 30 years to get. And when I finally got it with the salary to match, when that disappears, you kind of disappear as well because that's what you've been for so long. So that took a while to get over. And I think that was one of the probably the hardest thing was to try to come to terms with I'm no longer going to get necessarily the request to come and speak as an expert on a panel because now I'm no longer working for CNN or now I'm no longer working for the Zone or Sky. Now I am working for Lokia. Well, who the heck are they? And so your expertise is being put into question, right? And so whilst I've done hundreds of panels, most of them have always been when I was at either CNN or any of the major companies because that was the expert. That was the role where I was known. It's a very different world when you start working for yourself. And I mean, the knowledge is still there. Actually, there's more knowledge there. You're not seen in the same way. And so that was a really tough one to sort of get over. Get over it because I'm actually enjoying being me rather than being an extension of a corporate brand. It takes a while, especially after 30 years of trying to build that up. But now I'm building my own brand. Now I'm building what I'm all about. And I think that is that's a lot more exciting than even working for a major media brand and building their business. Now I'm building my business.
Mm.
And I think I was ready. I think I was ready to build that business but it did take a long time and I still mourn it every now and again. But now I can call myself a two-time CEO or two-time founder. That's pretty cool too. So it's okay. I got over it.
Well, we need to do like a virtual high five because that was incredible. And you said something there that was really beautiful. And I'll tell you what it was. It was, I get to be me.
Yeah,
I actually get to be me, as opposed to being Rochelle from CNN or the
exactly.
VP of this company who is here because that company wants her
Hmm.
to be there.
Yeah.
You have all the experience, and the reason why you were on those speaking gigs and those panels was because of your experience, not necessarily because that you were part of CNN. And I realized the name might open the door, but that's kind of like a way of saying like there's nothing stopping you from being going on multiple other
No,
speaking
no,
panels,
and I
right?
still do to
Yeah.
be fair. I don't do them as much because there's only so many hours in a day, and but I do them still,
Mm. But you do
but
them for
I'm no
you.
longer defined by them.
But you do them for you.
Yes,
Now,
exactly.
and there's a difference there.
Yeah,
You get to choose where you want to go and speak
yeah.
and what audience you want to be presented in
Hmm.
front of and who you want to rub shoulders with and who you want to hang out with. You now get to choose that path yourself.
Yeah.
And as you just said there, you get to be you,
Yeah,
which is more
absolutely.
important.
And that after 30 years in corporate, it's about time, I think, that I started to do things for myself rather than for the corporate machine. And there's nothing wrong with the corporate machine for some people. There really isn't. And I thought for 30 years that that was my path
Mm,
until it wasn't. And then you've got to pivot and you've got to make sure that you please yourself and your family and you it, but first and foremost, you got to make sure that you are okay and that what you're doing is, something that you really, really want to do. And that took a little bit longer because whilst my consultancy is great and it's bringing in the revenue that I needed to bring in, it's not as exciting as I'd hoped. And that was one of the things that I realized after doing it for 5, 6 months, that I wasn't as fulfilled as I'd hoped it would be. And so I needed to find something in
Mm.
addition to. And I think that was a pivotal moment for me is when I realized I can actually do two things. One that brings in the money, and the other thing that brings in the joy. And it's a really good combination for someone like me who's always on the go and who's always like crazy busy. I'm a typical Gemini. I like to do two things at the same time. And that's the perfect combination for me. It keeps me grounded. One of them keeps me grounded. The other one is just pure joy, almost like a passion project that I actually get to play around with, which is great.
Mm. Like this for me is my passion project.
Yeah,
I enjoy
exactly.
talking.
And you need to do something that you're passionate about as well, right? It
Totally.
is so important that you just don't do your sort of corporate sort of what you're supposed to do. I don't have any major hobbies. I don't have major hobbies, but what I do enjoy is half of my work I really, really love doing, absolutely adore it. And the other half is just it keeps my mind and my brain busy because I still build strategies. So I've got the best of both worlds now. I've got two companies that I'm founded and I'm running, and one is business, the other is fun. A
And
little
that's
bit
the
of
Gemini,
business.
and that's the Gemini side of you fulfilled, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
if
Who
you
knew?
had you stayed living the Tuesday that we talked about, the
Yeah.
kind of mundane as it was, and still looking up, and all you can see is this ladder above you that is
Mm.
blocked by men normally, what
Mm.
would that have cost you had you stayed?
I think ultimately I wouldn't have been as happy as I am now. So happiness, really, that it doesn't mean that I wasn't happy. There were definitely times that I was very happy and I enjoyed my job, but pure happiness, that was no longer the case. It was just part and parcel of my life. And I don't think I actually even realized that I was unhappy for so long because it was just part and parcel of what I did. That was me. That was corporate me. You don't realize how unhappy that corporate life can make you until you decide you want to do stuff for yourself. And I don't think I can ever go back. I never say never, but I would there would be a lot of things that would have to go wrong for me to go back into corporate full time.
What an amazing answer. So you spent decades in the world, Warner Brothers, Sky, CNN, Global Media
Hmm.
Corporation, as we know. You knew how to play the game. You
Yeah.
were exceptional at it. You were probably better than most above you. And at some point, you had to stop believing that that game was worth playing. So,
Mm.
what belief about success and about what you were supposed to want or what you were supposed to prove had to die for you to walk away from the very thing that you spent your entire career building?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I don't think I'm totally 100% there yet. I think corporate me, there's still a little bit of part of corporate me in there. It's very difficult to get rid of your corporate self after 30 years in that business.
Agreed.
But that really works for me because the consultancy business, I work with corporate companies. And I work with corporate media companies. And so that corporate me is still there. It's still alive and kicking, but it's not taken over my life anymore. And I think the realization that it doesn't have to take over my life took a little while to realize, but I think that's ultimately it hasn't died, it's just gone to sleep. I still call on it
Mm.
on a fairly regular basis, but it's not defined by it anymore. And I think that is probably the most important thing when you start to work for yourself, especially after a long corporate career. That doesn't work for everyone, but I am very much of the realization that I've given enough to corporate, and now I just want to do the things that give me joy. and that are fulfilling at the same time, right? So, and I think that's what both of these things are doing. But yeah, part of corporate, Rochelle,
Mm.
did have to die for me to be able to become an entrepreneur because that's a totally different mindset than being in the corporate world and being ruled by the board or your manager or whoever that may be. I don't have anyone I am now answering to. So it can be quite lonely as well because now you've got to make all of the decisions and you no longer have someone to say, oh, no, 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 or, oh, yeah, definitely. Now it's down to you to sort of go and do that. So that's a different type of, it's a different type of living. And that's a tough realization. And that was especially the first year was really, really tough. And I found that that took the longest for me to realize was not so much, I could get the clients, I could get all of that. For me, it was making the decisions that I needed to make. So being able to say no to things because it doesn't fit within your ecosystem. That's really, really tough when you're an entrepreneur, right? Saying no to potential clients, but you have to do that sometimes. And that's a really tough thing to do. And I think, yes, it's good that the corporate Rochelle is no longer the same as it was 2, 3 years ago. It cannot be. So yeah, in a way it's a little bit sad, but on the other hand, it's a really good thing as well.
It's just a new chapter, and it's a new you that is
Yeah.
blossoming from where you were before. And I agree with you, it can take anything between a year to 2 years to adjust. It's a new mindset. It's a new, like a spider shedding its skin. It's
Hmm.
it's a new dynamic of everything that you just explained brilliantly well. And you're absolutely right. There is also part of it where I often was like, I felt guilty if I would 2 o'clock in the afternoon decide to pop into town and get a coffee because I just
Yeah.
could, because no boss could tell me that I couldn't, or all those kind of things, or just decided to have a day off tomorrow because I just needed one, or whatever reasons it might be. There is an element of guilt sometimes that can trick
Oh,
in.
definitely. I famously don't start my day until 10 a.m.
I love that.
I talk about it on LinkedIn all the time. I do not set an alarm ever, unless I have the flight to catch. But I do not set an alarm. I just wake up naturally. And if that's at 8 a.m., fantastic. If it's at 6 a.m., also good. But I will not start work until 10. I don't do any calls unless there's absolutely no other way. And everyone knows, do not bother her until 10 o'clock in the morning. But I will work on the weekends.
Mm,
So it does come around and there's different things. But yeah, you play to your strengths. And I
mm.
think that's sometimes it is hard to sort of say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I am just going to stop today, or I've got this fantastic book I want to finish reading, or and that's okay. That is okay. You do need to take breaks every now and again, and that coffee that you're taking in town or meeting up with a friend for whatever, those are good things. And I highly recommend them because they reset your brain so that you can come back and do the things you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And corporate Rochelle, you had to let go of corporate Rochelle
Yeah.
in order to allow the Rochelle that now can wake up
Hmm.
relaxation and freely at 10 o'clock in the mornings. And
Yes.
then the Rochelle that is more happier and more happier within herself.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to let go of that corporate side of Rochelle. And I
Mhm.
liked what you said, where sometimes you just look back and you have to reflect and remind yourself that actually that is no longer the life I wanted, and
No.
that's okay. And I'm on the right path because this is what I want for myself for now.
Yeah.
And I love that. So you left the corporate world, you
Mhm.
started building your consultancy agency, and then once you're out, even after you'd forced, yourself out, whether you got redundant or you walked away and whatever it might have been, what lie were you potentially still telling yourself deep down about how much of the old world you still need to hold on to that nearly stopped you from going all into where happy Rochelle is today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, starting a consultancy, basically continuing on where I left off in the same sort of industry, even though it was working for myself rather than for a corporation, I was still doing exactly the same thing. And I thought that that made sense.
It was like the natural
That's what I
transition.
knew. Exactly,
Mm,
natural
mm.
progression. Just do it for yourself. But I realized quite quickly, so that I started Lokia at the end of June, and by November, I was in Dubai going to a conference, and I had a conversation with someone that he was actually the MC, and he had an amazing energy, and I absolutely adored him. And we had a conversation, and he said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "What are you doing? You're not doing what you want to do. Figure out what do you want to do because you're not happy. Yes, you've got your consultancy and you're doing okay, but it's ultimately not really what you want. It's what you know, but not what you want. So go and figure out what do you want." And I was like, "Oh, for goodness sake, okay, fine." Kind of gave him a little bit of attitude. And then I had to go to Riyadh for the first time ever. And I was moderating a couple of panels at a telecoms conference. And one of the panels was an all-female panel. So these are all C-suite women working in STEM professions. So honestly, super, super bright women. But we are in Riyadh, we're in Saudi. So I thought, oh my God, this is not going to be easy. They're going to want to know all the questions beforehand. It's all going to have to be scrutinized. Is that nothing like that? It was by far the best panel I've ever done. It was fantastic. The women were super, super bright. They were clear. They were confident. The audience, which was probably 85% male, were so on board with what the women were saying. And they were super supportive. There were five women on stage, and it was a first for me to sort of do that, especially in a city like Riyadh. It was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. And I was like, I want to do more of this. Like, I want to do more. I want to work with women that are smart, that are going through transition, that are changing the world and are doing different things. And then the third thing that happened just before Christmas was I'm very active on LinkedIn. Love it. And I started posting a lot about redundancies and trying things on your own and doing things for yourself. And I found I had connected with someone that I didn't know beforehand. I recognized her name because she had the same name as one of my high school friends. And it's quite unusual. And so she posted that she got a new job. And so, as you do on LinkedIn, when there is an announcement like that, you say, "Oh, congratulations, that's fantastic. Well done. Good luck," all of that good stuff. And she sent me a message. She sent me a DM. Basically, she said, "Can I send you like an email? Can I send you a message? I've got something to tell you." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, of course. Why not? Here you go." And a couple of days later, just before Christmas, I got a message from her. And in this message, she was like, "I want to thank you." And I'm like, "What did I do?" Like, I had no idea what she was talking about. She said, "I want to thank you because like you, I'm in my 50s. I've owned restaurants all my life. I never had to work for someone else, but COVID basically took my last business a couple of months ago, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't even have a CV. I never worked for anyone else. And your posts came at the right time for me, and I was reading them, and I was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. Because I was very open about redundancy and starting afresh and doing all of that. And she was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So she built her CV, and the job that she got was the job that, you know, and I congratulated on her. And she was like, "Oh my God, you were instrumental in me getting this job because I actually really looked up to what you were doing." And I had no idea.
Mm,
I had absolutely no idea. And it was such a lovely message. And it was such a heartwarming sort of was like, this is amazing.
mm.
And that's how Rebound and Rise kind of became because it's all about build women through transformations and trying to do new things. And these three things together between someone giving me a kick up the backside, all female panel, and then her message to me all in the space of like a month, that's what the catalyst was for me to start Rebound and Rise. And all it is a women's networking and events platform. And it is basically being there. And we've got these amazing coffee mornings all over the world. And it's just brilliant. It's a really fun sort of side project that is actually kind of taken over my life at the moment.
Well, that's the thing though. And you're obviously passionate about it, and there was something
Yeah.
in that emotion that hit you by helping somebody else.
Yeah.
And what was brilliant was it was just one person that
Hmm.
reached out that appreciated you, and you helped
All it
them.
took.
Yeah, right. And it's all it took. And then your feeling was, what if that one could be 10 or
Hmm.
50 women? And what if I could be the champion to help other people and bring people together, which is what Rebound and Rise is all about.
Yeah.
And I love that. And as you said, Rebound and Rise is your passion, the thing that comes
Hmm.
from you within.
Yeah.
That's what we're built for, as humans in some ways, is that we should be doing stuff that fulfills us as people. Now, for
Hmm.
some people, fulfillment in that lighting up makes them joyful. They skip home after work every day, happy to tell their wives or their husbands how good work was. They could just be an accountant,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's what fulfills that person.
Hmm.
Whereas people like you and I, we have different ways of needing that fulfillment to fill our cups, if you like, in a
Yeah.
creative, more fun way, to be with other people who lift us up as much as we try to lift them up. And the story about the lady who got the job, what's interesting about that is her exit is the polar opposite to yours.
Hmm. Yeah.
That point in time, she's only ever worked for herself,
Hmm.
but then going into employment,
Yeah.
so she's got a internal emotional thing going on.
Yeah.
I now have to be employed, whereas yours was the complete polar opposite.
Opposite. It still spoke to her because it's starting over, especially for women in their 50s, is really, really tough.
Mm,
No matter whether you're going into employment or whether you're exiting employment, it's just as tough. And we're still in touch. I don't speak to her very often, but when I do, it's really nice. She still has the same job. She loves it.
mhm.
She doesn't have the responsibility that she used to, whereas with me, it's the opposite. I now have
Right.
all the responsibility. So yeah, so whilst it's opposite, there's a connection there, and I think that's so important, and it's what makes all of this worthwhile.
100%. And this is exactly what the Exit Diaries is about. It's about
Yeah,
recognizing different formalities of that exit, what we have to go through as
yeah.
humans for that change that has to happen, whatever the situation is. I want to go back to a situation and a change. We're going to rewind a little bit, but you obviously home native land of Netherlands,
Yeah.
the beautiful Netherlands, and you had in your hand a one-way ticket to New York.
Yes.
We're talking 1980s New York, which
Hmm.
is a little bit crazy. And
A lot
you
crazy.
you became a nanny by day, right? And
Yeah.
then at night you were living a completely different life. You
Partier
were
by night.
yeah, you were like the world famous nightclub of Studio 54,
Yeah.
parties, the energy
Yeah.
of New York in that era.
Hmm.
Take me back to that period. What was it actually like as an 18-year-old girl from the Netherlands
Yeah.
to then live inside that kind of split life of working? You have been brought up in Europe, you are partying at nighttime in a totally different world. What was that like?
Oh my God. It made me. It really, really did. I always wanted to live in New York. I don't know how old I was when I kind of wanted to live in New York. I always had that sort of romanticized sort of viewpoint of New York City. And I told my mom, like when I was in my early teens, that one day I will live in New York. And my mom was like, yeah, okay, whatever. We'll talk about it again when you're 18. And because I'm the oldest of a whole bunch of kids. And so I finished high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I worked in a shop and didn't really like it very much. And that dream of living in New York was there. Holland in the mid 80s was really, really tough. It was tough to find jobs. I didn't really want to continue with school. And I just wanted something different. And so before my age, when I was 17, I started looking in the classified ads for jobs in New York. And at the time, there was one country newspaper, the Telegraaf, which always had jobs for au pairs. And I was like, I can do that. My English is pretty good. And it was my way. And so I went through them every single Saturday and like contacted the ones where I thought, oh, this is New York, and found myself a family that were interested in hiring me for a year in April. Now, my birthday is in June, so I was still 17, and they kind of wanted to talk to my parents.
Mhm.
And I hadn't told my mom. My parents were divorced. I hadn't, so it was just my mom. And I had to tell her, and I was like, Mom, I think I found myself a job. And she goes, Oh, where? I was like, In New York. Oh, New Jersey. But for me, that was New York. And so my mom was like, Oh, no, I'm not sure, Rochelle. I mean, really, do you want to do this? I'm like, Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, to make a long story short, they had the conversation. They sent me the flight tickets. And by August, I was in New York City,
Wow.
taking care of their 4-month-old, and they had a 9-year-old. And I was really super, super lucky. I came into a family in New Jersey that were fabulous. She was Italian, he was Mexican, and they had, I mean, the food. I'm going from bland Dutch fried food to Nonna cooking in New York City. She lived in Brooklyn, cooking like every Friday, the most amazing dishes. I loved it. And so I told my mom after 3 months of being there, I'm never coming back. I stayed for 7 years, met my husband, loved it, absolutely loved it. It was great. I did the au pair job for a year and a half, and then I moved into with friends in Brooklyn, did a bit of waiting tables, did a bit of modeling, partied by night, worked during the day, lived paycheck to paycheck, um, but had the time of my life over there. And New York in the 80s was tough. Late 80s, early 90s. It was a tough city to be in. Times Square was still very seedy. I had to go into Port Authority, which is on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue, to come from New Jersey by bus because that was the only money we had. And we would get in on a Friday night after work. We would, after working with the kids, me and my friend, and we would take the bus into Port Authority. We'd party all, well, we would just go and party all night on a Friday. We'd always end up meeting people. And then breakfast on Saturday morning. And we would hang out in the city, shopping and spending time in Central Park and whatever. And then at night, we would do exactly the same thing. And we would not go home until Sunday late afternoon because that's what you did. I mean, at 18, 19 years old, there were no rules, I had no parental sort of guidance. And so really lucky that I came through that unscathed. But we had the best time. We went to all the different clubs, went to Studio 54, went to the Palladium, went to the Limelight. All of these clubs were amazing. It was the era of like Madonna and it was just fantastic. I loved every minute of it. Yeah, so it was a life-defining moment, and I think I started living my best life when I moved to New York from the countryside in Holland, really.
I think you've just made a lot of people feel very jealous because that was like a movie. And
It does feel like a movie
yeah,
sometimes.
and quite weird how you and I from the film industry, and there you were living it before you went into that role.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Absolutely.
you left your hometown as a girl with a ticket, probably like excited as anything. And then somewhere in that chaos, the nannying, the nightlife, the survival, whatever it is, ultimately you become a woman, right?
Yeah.
In that city. What shifted inside you in New York that made you capable of everything else that came after?
Do you know what? I think it's the self-reliance. It's just trying to do the best you can with limited resources because everything is, even back then, everything was expensive and difficult. And I was sometimes doing 3, 4 jobs and I had to make my rent and but still wanted to hang out and party with my friends. And so, yeah, I mean, there were times where I had 2 or 3 jobs on the go, which is kind of what I'm doing now, which is kind of weird when you think about it. It's come full circle. I didn't even realize it until now. It's like what I was doing back then, I'm doing now as well, in between all of these years of corporate. But yeah, I mean, that was those days really make me resilient. And if I could survive 1980s New York City, and that's Manhattan. I'm not even talking like upstate where things are much. No, I'm talking the city. My first apartment was on Ludlow Street. Now, if Manhattan, that is the bad part of town. That's the Lower East Side. That was rough, but it was living. It was like I said, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I'm 100% convinced that that's where I learned my resilience and my tenacity was there.
your drive and your
Yeah.
ability to juggle a million things at once
Hmm.
and your carefree attitude and
Oh, I was always a
the
bit carefree, but
yeah.
yeah, that did emphasize it.
And everything that you did though was all based around socializing, happiness,
Yeah.
and just having a great time.
Yeah.
You kind of answered my question that I was going to ask next, actually, which was about being in New York. What ultimately did you learn that you could hold two worlds at once?
Hmm.
And it's funny because you've done it for me, right?
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, did that then make it possible for you to then leave your safe corporate world and then go in at alone as a business owner and then juggle different things at the same time? Did it all
Mm,
stem from there, and has that had a knock-on effect throughout your career?
I didn't think so,
Mm.
but
Until now.
actually, probably yes, because I hadn't realized that I was doing because it was very normal, right? At 19, 20 years old, you have to make your rent. And so you ask your friend who is a cocktail waitress, do they need somebody for a Saturday? I'm happy to come and work because rent was due in a couple of days and I didn't have it. So that's the kind of stuff that you did back then. And it's kind of like what you're doing now. It's starting afresh, doing two different jobs. Actually, I'm doing three different jobs because I'm also working for Gain Advisors and I advise them on their event strategy. So I am doing three different things. So there is lots and lots of different revenue streams. What I always call it's like a portfolio career. So it's having a career with lots of different things that you're doing, different even income streams, some of them more successful than others, but ultimately it all leads to one thing, which is doing all the things that you like to do. I am not a one career kind of person. I like the idea of doing different things at different times. I think it maybe, like I said before, it may be part of my personality, right? I just need that external stimulus
Hmm.
all the
And
time. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy networking. I actually do enjoy it. My husband hates it. I thrive on it. I absolutely love it. And it's just part and parcel. I think probably started out in New York because I wasn't like that at home. So friends that I have from home and even my sisters, they're like, you weren't like this really, not in the same way, but New York kind of brought that out. And I think part
mm,
of my personality really came to life in New York City, and that hasn't left me. That's still the same.
it's still here today
Hmm.
because in
I'm
New
afraid
York,
so.
no, but it's a good thing because it makes up who you are and why you're so
Yeah.
brilliant and why I just love hearing about your stories. And what ultimately is done is in New York, you were this free-spirited
Hmm.
Rochelle. Today, you're free-spirited Rochelle, and that's just a really wonderful full circle.
Just one that's a lot more mature and
Wiser.
slightly less risk averse. Not by
Yeah.
much, but just a little bit.
I don't think you're that risk reverse, if I'm honest with you. So let's rewind again to a question I asked you earlier about a typical Tuesday, but today, right?
Mhm.
What does a typical Tuesday look like now for
Yeah.
Rochelle?
Well, next Tuesday I will be in Barcelona.
Oh, no way.
So
I love
my
Barcelona. Tell me
typical
all about it.
Tuesday
Hmm.
now is a non-typical Tuesday.
Yep.
This week I met up yesterday with my co-founder at Rebound and Rise. We had to do some things for the coffee morning that we're organizing in Barcelona next week. So I'm flying to Amsterdam first to visit my parents and my sister, and then I'm flying from Amsterdam to Barcelona, and I'll be in Barcelona at the Integrated Systems Europe conference on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I've got a coffee morning scheduled on the Friday with women that are either at ISE or they're living in Barcelona, and I'm organizing that with my two friends that live in Barcelona. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. So that's what my Tuesday is going to look like next
And
week.
and how many people are coming to that roughly?
So we have room for 35, but usually the coffee mornings are anywhere between 30 and 45 women, depending on the city. We have an amazing panel. We have a Q&A, and there's networking, and yeah, it's going to be really fun. Look me up on LinkedIn. There is a link there where you can get your free tickets. We have a multi-generational panel with women in leadership. So we have someone there from their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s talking about leadership and their decade of life and what that looks like. It's a brilliant concept. Absolutely love it. So yeah,
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. We'll share your link anyway for you to people to check her out on LinkedIn, and then they can see more Rebound and Rise events coming up because
Yeah, we had quite a few last year. We had one, we had 4 or 5 in London. We did one in Amsterdam. We did two in Dubai,
Mhm.
one in Denver, and one in Indianapolis. Uh,
Amazing.
this year, the first one we're doing is Barcelona, then London, and then God only knows where we're going to go.
Love it. And what is amazing about that is, had you not left the corporate world, had you still
I
been the
wouldn't have done that.
VP, had you not had that connection with the lady who you helped out, had you not been on that panel with those incredible women over in the Middle East,
Yeah,
this wouldn't have been where it is today. And when you speak about this and these events, there is a real difference in your voice. And I can really see that this is something that really lights you up.
yeah.
And you went from one person to 10 to now 35 plus across the world. That is just phenomenal. How long have you been running it for?
So we started exactly. So next week is going to be, no, the week after next is going to be 1 year.
Wow.
We incorporated Rebound and Rise in May of last year, so it's less than a year. And like I said, we've already been to like 5 or 6 different cities around the world. We've done supper clubs, we've done coffee mornings. There's more on the horizon. There's going to be an ambassador program. There's so much stuff happening. Can't keep track. It's it's
Love
been
it.
it's been so much fun. I'm loving every minute of it.
This is your thing. This is
Yep,
you. This is exactly
exactly.
what you were born to do. I love it. All right, lastly, because I know you got a dash and I'm keeping your time. So last thing then, Rochelle,
Yep.
I want you to imagine something that you are standing in a room
Hmm.
and there are two versions of you looking back at you, okay?
Okay.
There's the 18-year-old girl standing at the airport in Netherlands,
Yep.
one-way ticket to New York,
Hmm.
and the other one is decades later, the corporate VP
Yeah.
title. You're looking up at the ladder and there's nowhere left for you to climb. Two different ages, different countries,
Hmm.
different people, different lives, but the same choice in front of them.
Hmm.
What do you say to both of them?
Oh. For me, very much believe in your own capabilities. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. I always suffered a lot from sort of imposter syndrome. I didn't go to university. So, in a world where everyone goes to uni, or at least a great portion of people go to uni, I just barely have a high school education. And I always thought that that was going to hold me back. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. And if I would have told myself anything at the age of 18, is just go for it because opportunities will open up just from your personality alone. You don't need a university degree in order to be successful. I did make both of my kids go to university, don't get me wrong. That's because they both wanted to go, but you can do things. You're smart, very smart, but in a different way, perhaps. I'm not necessarily book smart, but I'm very much street smart. And that's something that New York taught me is that just go for it. Just do it. Just go for it.
Mm.
You're good
Like
enough.
2 years ago, say the corporate, or 3 years ago, the corporate lady on the brink of thinking about leaving, or thinking about, is this it for me? Or the self-sabotage is the difficult
Yeah.
things on your shoulder that the devil is telling you and there's an angel. What would you say to her?
Just go for it.
The
You
same thing, go for it.
cannot lose. You cannot lose. You're just going to have to try it and see where you land. Now, I'm
Mm.
really, really lucky. I've got a partner that is super, super supportive. I've got a family that's very supportive. I've got friends that are very supportive. So you do need that support network. But if you have that support network, just go for it because you never know what is going to happen next, and you'll be so much happier if you do the things that you really want to do. And I can say that to anyone. It's like follow your dreams, make sure that you don't skip over your dreams for the sake of someone else's. And I think that for me, that was leaving corporate and doing something on my own. But for someone else, it may be the opposite. But just follow them and make sure that you make yourself happy first and foremost, because that's the most important thing.
Oh, Rachelle Peterson. That was the
Wisdom
defining
right there.
question. Oh my God, you're a star. High fives with virtual
Advice.
ones.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My
You've been
pleasure.
so amazing.
Things have
Stop.
come full circle, Jack.
Thanks for being here. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own exit, or the one you're still thinking about, it means something. These stories only work if they reach the people who need them the most. So if someone came to mind while you're listening, share this with them. New diary entries are going to be dropping every single week, so please follow the Exit Diaries whenever you listen. And if you want to share your own exit story, the doors are always open. Until the next entry.